Hello and welcome to another edition of Ohio State Buckeyes Primetime Live. This is the Collins Show. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Stano.
And I'm your host, Garrison Gaddy.
So, this is the game. This is the week. Ohio State, Michigan always invokes a lot of emotion on both sides. But before we get too far into the game, I want to ask you, Garrison, how was your Thanksgiving?
Dude, so I actually didn't celebrate Thanksgiving yesterday. Parents went to Detroit. I spent time with my girlfriend. My younger sister went to her husband's family. My older sister did the same, and we're actually all getting together as a family on Saturday after the game to celebrate Thanksgiving. So hopefully we can have a great dinner after a Buckeye victory on Saturday.
Yeah, that would be
Yourself?
nice. That would be
How
nice.
about you, man?
Oh, it was good. Yesterday, I actually went to hang out with my side of the family.
Nice.
And then today, we were actually with my wife's side of the family. So it was a good time that we were able to spend with both sides of the family, make everyone happy. So, that's kind
Glad
of
to
the
hear.
goal here with this time of year. But
Yep.
yeah, and a lot of the talk around the dinner table was about this game coming up. It's the game. It's the biggest one of the year for Ohio State. It's the biggest one of the year for Michigan. There's even some news that has happened since we last spoke on Monday, including the line shifting down towards Michigan's favor a little bit. It opened at 21, and now it's down, as you can see here, to 19.5. What do you think? What do you think the reasoning for that is?
Man, I would have to guess a lot of people are betting the over. I would have to assume that from a lot of people I've been watching and listening to, they've been doing that. They get that like I was watching Cover 3 podcast, and I think even Tom Fornelli picked the over on that. I personally tend to lean towards the whatever to go against the spread in this game. I usually tend to do that. My score prediction for this game, I did that. That's a lot of points. That's a lot of points.
It is a lot of points.
And it's not that Ohio State can't do it. I just wouldn't bet on that. That's a lot of points for the game. It is.
It is a lot of points. I will be fully transparent. I went ahead and I think Ohio State is going to cover. I took that.
Nice.
So I took the line, and I also took the over. We'll get into that a little bit later once we talk a little bit more about predictions. But this actually surprised me that the line has shifted this way, considering Will Johnson isn't going to play.
Right.
And perhaps it shifted downwards because that news was kind of already out there. He's missed the last 5 games anyway, so maybe people in Vegas weren't expecting him to play in this game anyway. It seems like he's kind of in shutdown mode and just trying to protect his draft stock, which personally I think is a little soft, but it is what it is from his perspective.
No, I agree. Usually I would tend to say, you know what, man, I understand. He's done whatever he has to do for the University of Michigan, got them a championship last year or part of it. But then I think back to when JSN got hurt. And I remember a bunch of fans in Ann Arbor saying he quit on the team. So with that being in mind, it looks like he did the same. Looks like he's ducking number 4 freshman Jeremiah Smith, who Devin Gardner on his show with Sam Webb said that he's Julio Jones as a junior in college. What a compliment.
Yeah. Wow. So I want to get into, obviously this is the Collins Show. So, comment on anything you want to hear us talk about. We'll have some, news and notes here we'll get to, but, the main thing we want to do is hear from you guys. So, whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about. But, coming into this game, Garrison, I really think that, the weather is actually going to play a factor for the first time all year. I don't know. I know you're a little bit further north here than I am, but outside here in Columbus, it is cold, it is windy, and it is not really conducive to the football weather that we've had really all season long.
Yeah.
It's, this is the first game all year that I think weather is going to be a factor. And if the wind continues to blow the way it's blown all day, it's going to affect the passing game, and that's a disadvantage for Ohio State. What do you think about that?
I would agree with you. We are the team that would pass the ball more in this game between us and the team up north. I think it affects us to an extent. If it's not, depending on what the precipitation is whether my worry factor goes up and down. If it's
The good
cold,
news is
I'm
there
okay with
shouldn't
it.
be any precipitation, so we shouldn't have to worry
Okay.
about that.
Okay, then good. Because I don't know what it looks like where you are, man, but it's been snowing all day here in in
I
Michigan.
saw some pictures you had up there on the old social media, so
Yeah,
it's
man.
supposed to be sunny. It's just going to be freezing.
And that's a good day of football. I think that's good Midwest football.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of these guys they play in this type of weather. Uh, Will Howard's from Pennsylvania, so I'm gonna assume he knows how to play in the cold. So I mean, I'm not too worried about it, but it will play a factor.
yeah. No, I agree with you. And again, as long as the wind doesn't gust to 25
Hmm.
miles an hour early on, I
Yep.
think they'll be fine. Because obviously, and we talked about this on Monday, Michigan can't throw the football.
No.
They've started quarterbacks for a reason. So if the wind does become a factor, I think it definitely swings in Michigan's favor. But I don't think it'll be too bad. One of the other pieces of news that happened since we talked on Monday is, and we had talked about this guy possibly leaving, is London Merritt flipped to Colorado.
Yeah.
A four-star
Yes.
four-star recruit decided to
Oh
go
man.
ahead and flip over to Dion and what he's got going over there.
Yeah.
I want to hear your initial thoughts because I've got a lot of thoughts about this particular flip, but I want to hear what you have to say first.
I'm amazed by it. I look back at when Dallin Hayden, which I wasn't surprised by. I thought Dallin Hayden was going into the transfer portal the year before he did and go to probably Tennessee,
Yeah.
which was a lot of the news at that time. When I saw he went to Colorado, I was beside myself. And then when I see the season he had, I'm still beside myself. Had he came back, if he stayed at Ohio State, he would have had. He probably would have had just as close to the year he had, or about just a little bit less. The snaps that we gave James Peoples, they would have gone to him. And I think that had he stayed, because they know the position they're in with Dallin, he would have got more carries than James Peoples has this year. We'd have almost more of a 3-back system than a 2-back system, but not to the. Of course, he won't get the same snaps that Judkins and Henderson would get. But then we fast forward here, and Merritt goes to Colorado. I don't get it.
Yeah.
I want to have a reason for why he would. Do me wrong. Like if I was a high school kid and Deion Sanders came to my doorstep and I'm a Cowboys fan, trust me, it'd be tough to say no to him. But you look at the defensive system they have over at Colorado. They've gotten better since they were from last year, but it's still nothing to brag about.
It's anything to write home about. Yeah.
Yeah. And whereas if you came to Ohio State, yeah, you're gonna share some snaps. You might wait till your sophomore or junior year to get some real starting time. But hey, I mean, listen, I'm never gonna begrudge a kid for the choice he makes. He made the choice to go to Colorado. But I mean, from the outside looking in, yeah, it looks weird. It looks weird.
So I think a lot of this is NIL driven. There have been rumblings that Merritt was going to flip for quite a while. And that, I don't think it's purely NIL driven. I think a lot of it did have to happen when, a lot of the talk surrounded when the defensive line just wasn't getting pressure on the quarterback. Jim Knowles wasn't allowing, or the whole Jim Knowles, Larry Johnson conflict was happening where the defensive line, they weren't allowed to do certain, moves depending on who you believe, certain things just weren't, the results just weren't there from the defensive line. So, a guy who lives on the edge like Merritt does, he's going to want to put up big numbers. And if he doesn't think that he can do that in a system that Jim Knowles likes to play, I don't begrudge him for flipping somewhere else. I think the Colorado move is strange, like you mentioned. The fit scheme-wise is a little odd. And Colorado, look, Deion's done a really good job with Colorado.
Yes, he has.
I'm going to say that right now. That team was a 4-win program before he got there, the year before he got there. How long is he going to stay there? there are already talks about possibly going into the NFL, as a package deal, wherever Shador gets drafted, because he's going to go to a bad team. We just had another NFL head coaching job open today with the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would
Understandably
think at
too.
yeah, sure. I would expect at some point he would also want to go to a bigger program that's got more resources and better facilities if he wants to stay in college to help build a
Mm-hmm.
program up. So, if that's where London wants to go, great. This also, spinning it to a positive Ohio State side, this could indicate that they are, maybe in the hunt still for Jakeem Stewart. I know he's crystal balled to USC,
Mm-hmm.
but if he
And
ends
he
up,
canceled his visit too.
yeah, which
So
is a bummer.
that is a bummer.
But if he ends up seeing Notre Dame, beat the crap out of USC, he's like, hey, I mean, I understand Southern California, but do I really want to end up here?
Which is I
Where
think
I'm
is
just gonna
gonna
be,
happen.
yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a positive Ohio State spin. Regardless,
Mm-hmm.
another way we can think about this is it opens up more NIL money to possibly flip Sanders,
Yep.
David Sanders Jr., which I would much rather have him, to be honest.
So I see this question. Robert Howard here. He says prediction: Teton will have 4 players throw 4 pass, barely forward, but forward. But I want to take that to what do you expect from Davis Warren this weekend?
I don't expect a lot. I expect the pattern to continue as
Mm-hmm.
far as the Ohio State defense struggling out of the gate with a first drive. They have issues with scripted drives. It's been
Yeah.
like that all year long. I expect that to. I don't see any reason why that would stop now. I understand Michigan's defense is really, really bad. I'm sorry, their offense is really, really bad, especially throwing the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they will have had a whole, they don't have just a whole week to prepare. This is the type of game where both teams, they prepare year round. So they're going to have some tricks up their sleeve that Ohio State hasn't seen before. And I could see them, scoring points on their first drive. Past that, I'm not sure what they're going to be able to do. I mean, this defense, we talked about on Monday how well this defense has played since that Oregon game. And I don't see them scoring more, maybe than 10 or 13 points, the absolute most. What do you think?
I'm in complete agreement with you. I don't expect much. I wrote this down, and so from the time he came back as a starter against Michigan State, he threw 68.4 in that game. And then the next one against Oregon, 56.5, then against IU at 50%, and then Northwestern 74. He's still a up and down quarterback, much more towards the down part.
Yeah.
I don't think that they have a better offensive line than IU. I also don't believe they have a better. He's not better than Curtis Work. We all know that.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, so nowhere near that. And so I look at what Ohio State's defense can do, especially its secondary and pass rush. And then I see the skill set of Davis Warren with the incompetency of pass protection by the offensive line. I think to myself, man, they have to score on that scripted drive. On the first drive they have
Yep.
to score a touchdown. Because
Yep.
I think that if they don't see a touchdown and get that confidence up, and because a lot of football is 50% mental, 50% physical. So if you can see yourself score, that helps a whole lot. And for Ohio State, you don't want to give that other team confidence. That's the last thing you want to do. And so,
Yep.
but after that scripted drive, say they don't score, I'm thinking to myself, what possibly can they do? Kirk Campbell came out and said they have their GAs and other staffers watching the Ohio State film all year and that they have things up their sleeve. But then I started thinking to myself, Ryan, wasn't that kind of a coaching malpractice that you've had all these nice plays that you would use against the Ohio States of the world, but then again you had these other 5 losses that could have been probably turned into wins because they were all close, except for the Texas one, and you blew it in
Yeah.
Oregon, but you blew it. You couldn't use
Yeah.
those plays, and then I'm like, what could Kirk Campbell possibly have up his sleeve? And so
I don't think he's got a whole lot of stuff up his sleeve. Let's just put it that way. This comment here from Steve, would love to see Chip use tempo early. And I agree. I do think Chip,
oh yeah.
I think the offense, flipping into the Ohio State side of the field, offensively, I think they are going to have a lot of things that Michigan hasn't seen on film. And as we talked
Mhm.
about Monday, I don't think this team has played a complete game yet so
Yep.
far this season. I think part of that is they've got stuff in the playbook they've been saving. They've been saving
Yeah.
specifically for this matchup. I Michigan's defensive front is the strongest part of their whole roster,
Mhm.
and I still don't think they're going to be able to get enough pressure on Will Howard to stop them being effective in the pass game, which would be part of why Chip would use tempo. I think the run game might start out a little bit slow, but I do think by the second half, it's going to start to kind of avalanche because I do think Ohio State will eventually wear down Michigan, even with the reshuffled offensive line. I mean, they played great against Indiana, and I thought that was all. To be honest, that was all I needed to see to really show me that they are ready for this game. I'm not sure if that's how you feel specific to the offensive line, but that's how I feel. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of ways which Michigan can stop the Ohio State offense.
Say the offensive line part for me one more time.
So the offensive line, we talked about it on Monday, how well
Mhm.
they played against Indiana. I think they are going to be fine in this game. I think early on they might struggle a little bit in the run game as far as opening up
Yeah.
some gaping holes. I do think by the second half they will wear down Michigan's front just because early in the game, Michigan, they're going to have to be chasing around Will Howard in the pocket.
Mhm.
And if they're not able to sack them, they're going to get frustrated. They're going to get tired. And I don't know that they're going to have enough energy in the second half to stop Trevion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins from getting 5-6 yards a pop when Ohio State does want to control the clock and really kind of step on their throats at the end of the game.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with it. Months before the season started, I said that this defense won't be as good simply because of the depth they lack from last year, and also when you play better teams and you have a tougher schedule, and your offense isn't as good, which means you're going to be on the field more. They're probably going to get tired more and give us more yards, touchdowns, all of that, which they have done. You look at Ohio State. Go back to the Indiana game where I disagreed with you, but to the extent, no, I really actually agree with you. At the end, that whole that last Travion run, I think you were right about this. That
Yeah.
had to do with wearing them down, and they couldn't stop it anymore. And then that's where Travion busted it loose. You look
Yep.
back at the Penn State game. Ryan, if you look back before this season, if you look at the last 3 years of Ohio State football, if I told you Ohio State would end the game with a 5 minute and 15-second drive of just straight running the football to win a game, would you believe me?
I
Probably.
would. Yeah.
You would?
Well, just because of the way that they progressed, but coming into this year, I
Okay.
would not have. I would not
Okay.
have.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Coming into this year.
Yeah.
So,
No chance I would have believed you on that.
yeah. And they did that against Penn State, one of the best run defenses in the country and defenses in general. And then I also, we talked about the offensive line a lot this year and the injuries they've had. I'm also going to look at a pattern. Against Nebraska, after Josh Simmons got hurt against Oregon, the offensive line struggled in that first game. After that, after having a game of 2 weeks of practice, 3 weeks of practice technically.
Yep.
3 weeks of practice, a
Yep,
game
with the bye week
together.
included. Yep.
Yep, a game together. Yeah, I had to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, a game together. They came in the next week against Penn State, 170 plus rushing yards. Came in the next game, 170 plus rushing yards against Northwestern. Now we
Yep.
lose McLaughlin. Yeah, the run game could have looked better this past week against shoot. Who is no, I'm sorry. I meant the Purdue game. That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
But yes, that the run game could have been better against Indiana. But coming to this second game, I have to believe that Carson Henn's been getting back at center, which he started at all last year. I went back and actually watched every single snap he had against Michigan last year just to see how he did. He didn't do bad. He didn't play bad in that game.
Mhm.
I would argue, except for the last McCoy interception, but that was probably more on the right guard.
That was more on Josh Fryer.
Yeah,
I didn't think he played particularly well in that game, but
he didn't.
He's part of the contingent on the offensive line that has really improved.
Mhm.
from last year.
Oh yeah, I didn't trust him coming to this year, but he's played. Like I said, that right side, the O line with him, Tashabola, they haven't played bad. They haven't played good, but they've been really steady.
Yep.
They don't make the big mistake. I think this offensive line can fare well against this defensive line for the Wolverines. I did say I do believe Stewart is going to get 2 sacks in this game. I think that a matchup to watch is Tegra versus Graham and seeing how he can perform against him. Because I do think Graham is going to be very big, especially in that first half. But once that second half rolls around, man, Ohio State, that's where they thrive. I don't like. I'm looking at it right here, man. The Wolverines average 6.3 points per game in the second half, or points per second half. Ohio State averages 22.9.
Yeah.
We go back and we talked on Monday about this, about how usually you would throw the scores out of this game, and I understand that, and part of me agrees with that. But I look at the stats, I look at the film, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, how do they compete?
I look, I know, and we talked about this a little bit on Monday. You're way more on the side of this is going to be a blowout, and Ohio State doesn't have a whole lot to worry about in this game. I am more cautious.
Yeah, no. By the way, I have a quiet cautiousness about myself right now. It's really quiet.
Okay, all right. I will be outwardly cautious just because I have seen too many times over the course of this rivalry where both teams come in, both sides, they come in big favorites, and then something happens where all of a sudden they lose big. So I'm not going to go ahead and say this is going to be a 50-point rout or anything like that. Now, would that be great? Sure. That would be, every Buckeye's dream. But I think the second half is really where Ohio State's a second half team. Those stats you cited, those show that the Buckeyes get better when the game gets longer. When it really comes to nut crunching time, they have stepped up, and I think that starts with Will Howard. His experience, his ability to make good decisions with the football, knowing when he needs to make really big plays, and knowing when he just needs to kind of get the ball out of his hands quickly so someone else can make plays. I think that's a big difference. And like I mentioned, I think this team is holding a lot of stuff back in terms of play calling. I wouldn't be surprised to see way more end arounds, specifically with Jeremiah Smith. I think that ankle's healthier than it was last week. It's hard for me to say that this is going to be a massive blowout, but I do think Ohio. I mentioned at the start of the show, I think Ohio State covers. I do think Ryan Day, if the game is out of hand late, I think he wants it to keep getting out of hand late. I don't see him putting his foot on that brake at any point in this game.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, what's the score? What score do you have?
So my official prediction for the game is similar to what Steve had commented earlier. I have 38-10. I have 38-10. I think the first half is when Michigan is going to get, I think they'll probably score either. I think they're going to score a field goal on that first drive, and then they might get a garbage time touchdown at the end, similar to what IU did last weekend.
Okay.
I think Ohio State, it will come in this game focused, angry, and ready to win. I don't see any possible way, especially with this game being at home with a frenzied, pissed off Ohio State fan base, that Michigan's going to be able to come in for the second time in a row at the shoe and win this game. I just don't see it. What do you think?
No, dude, you look at that crowd on Saturday. It was ruckus. It was insane. It was an insane asylum in that, 160,000, 106,000 plus just, out of their seats. And I saw, Jay Book tweeted this earlier on X, basically saying that, if Ohio State gets like a defensive touchdown, a punt return, a block punt, dude. Yeah, you remember that video? Have you seen that video or remember the game when Urban Meyer just sitting there on the sideline pumping up the crowd. You can just see that stadium going insane.
Yep.
I think this is going to be the craziest Ohio State stadium you've seen probably since the Urban Meyer era. I think this is going to be a huge, probably either that or I would say the 2019 Ohio State game against the Wolverines when Justin Fields came back in and threw that dime to Garrett Wilson on a rope.
Yeah,
on
the difference was that was
side.
at Michigan. So
yeah, well, yeah, hey, we were in there. You could hear us.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I mean, I expect the stadium to be insane that day.
Yeah. Well, and I do think to this comment's point, get to halftime with any kind of lead, the game's over. I agree.
Yep.
Michigan's only chance is to keep it close in the first half, and then hope for some flukiness to happen in the second half. And coming into this year, I would have said that flukiness could happen on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Special teams has been great, specifically in the last month. So I don't really see that coming into play. As far as the Ohio State in the past 3 years, terrible team as far as run fits. The defense has improved with that run defense. But I will say, coming into the game last year, Ohio State had the number one run defense, and we saw what happened there on that final Michigan drive. Ohio State couldn't get the ball. They couldn't stop them on third down, and they drained the last 6.5, 7 minutes off the clock. So Kyle McCord only had less than 2 minutes to drive down the field. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I will believe it when I see it. I'm at that point with anything in the game. I'm emotionally scarred from what's happened in the last 3 years.
Now, let me bring some positivity to you, okay?
Okay, let's hear it.
Now, Tommy Eichenberg, I will never take anything away from an All-American, okay? But last year, he didn't play like an All-American. Shoot, who was the other linebacker last year? It was
Chambers.
It was still Chambers. Yeah. I think this year's linebacking core is better than last year's. Agreed. I think Simon is playing better than both of them. I think that Sonny Styles has made a good improvement from where he was in the beginning of the season. You see guys like Arvell Reese getting into the game. That guy is just, man, he
Arvell Reese is going to be good.
Very good. If he were to start right now, I wouldn't be upset. The coaching staff, I would understand why. That's how good he is. He kind of reminds me of how Jermaine Matthews played last year as a true freshman. So, you look at him, even guys like Gabe Powers when they get in the game, like the linebacking core has gotten right. James Laurinaitis has done a great job with them. And I think that when you look at their run fits, as Goj is saying, by the way, go Navy, I think that's huge coming into this game, especially knowing that the Wolverine offensive line is not what we've seen over the last 3 years. I've seen a lot of Wolverine fans saying, we can just run the ball and get 6 yards to carry. Well, you know what? Indiana got 6 yards to carry too. But what happens when it doesn't happen? Because you're not going to, just because you average it, doesn't mean you're going to have it all game. Yeah. So I think once they get third and six and plus, they're dead in the water. They're dead in the water. Yeah, they might convert a couple here, not a couple here, a couple there, maybe a couple.
I could see them converting a few just based off, just draw plays, like Ohio State dropping back, expecting pass, and then they hand it off to Mullings or something, and they get I could see them converting on like a 3rd and 10 in that situation, which would piss me off. But other than that, I largely agree with your point. If they have to consistently convert on 3rd and long, they're in big trouble. Ohio State's going to be able to tee off on Warren. And okay, let me ask you this question. Okay. Would you be surprised to see a quarterback change in this game for Michigan? Would you be surprised to see them switch out Warren and put in Orji?
He's going to play. Orji's going to play. He's going to throw one pass.
Okay.
They haven't shown
I think he's going to play. Yeah, they're going to have packages for him, mostly run packages.
Yeah.
But do you think that they would put him in, let's say the first half goes so poorly for Michigan, they find themselves down 3 scores, and they're trying to find a spark. Would you see them finishing the game with Orji in that scenario?
No.
Okay, interesting.
And the reason I say it is because I think they know if they put Orgy in that game, it's gonna get a hell of a lot worse.
Okay, in the scenario I described, if they're down
Mm-hmm.
3 scores in the first half,
Mm-hmm.
what is there left to lose at that point? You're down 3 scores against one of the best teams in the country. Why not try something different? And it's not like
Because he
and
can't throw.
sure, but neither could Davis Warren.
Yeah.
To me, at that point, it's not like you're going to hurt either quarterback's feelings anyway, because neither one of them are going to start next season. That's why they got
Mm-hmm.
Underwood. He's going to start right away. So I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked to see a quarterback change in this game. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. If we did see one, if at any point we saw a quarterback change, by that time, man, I'm going to be celebrating with a bottle of champagne in my
Oh
hand.
yeah.
Because I at that point I know we've won, and not. I mean, I think Steve said it earlier in the chat that if we had the lead in the first half, the game's over. I think you brought it up actually. Yeah, if I see us up by 7, it's a wrap. I think we're up by 10. The game is gone for me.
They're up by 7 at any point?
I think if we go into half up by 7, it's a wrap for them. It's done.
Wow.
It's done, and it's because when you look at the coaching staffs.
Okay.
Sharon Moore is in his first year as an actual head coach. You can tell he is, and that he's just very inexperienced, and maybe out of his steez. You look at Kirk Campbell. Clearly, this job is too big for him. He's not built to be an offensive coordinator. He hasn't been an offensive coordinator since he was at Old Dominion, and even there, he was a failure. You look at Wink Martindale. His play calling has gotten better, but man, you are not far from Don Brown. You are not. Ohio State has the advantage at every single coaching level and position. I would say, man, I don't know one position or one position coach or coordinator where we don't have the advantage.
The one position where I would say there's maybe a disadvantage is defensive line. And that's just because we haven't seen the consistent production from the front four as far as sacks are concerned. And I think, I mean, a lot of fans, they just look at sack numbers like, oh, why aren't you getting the quarterback? There's a more nuanced conversation that needs to happen as to why that hasn't happened in certain games. But Michigan's defensive line, they do a good job, not just of pushing the pocket back in passing situations, but they also clog up running holes. So I would say that would be the one advantage they might have.
And it's crazy when you talk about the two offensive lines in that, because I mean, I could be wrong, but I think Ohio State is second in the conference in sacks right now. I'm looking for it right here.
You know, the sack thing,
but they come in waves though. It's not a consistency throughout the season. It's
yes. That's the thing.
We're first in the conference.
Okay, and a lot of that has come out from the Northwestern game and the IU game. Yes.
Yeah, we got 35 total. Michigan's third at 31.
Okay,
but I think that ours is just.
And you know what? A lot of those sacks from recent games, they haven't just. In fact, the majority of them haven't come from the defensive line. It's been blitzes from Sonny Styles, Cody Simons, mixing things up. Yeah. Caleb Downs coming in making plays.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think the ability of Knowles since the Oregon game to actually diversify what he wants to do with the play calling, I think that's been a big thing. And I think that's something Michigan probably isn't going to be able to prepare for in a real way that's going to keep them in this game.
No, I agree. And if there was one path for them, kind of like was it Doctor Strange, and was it Endgame? Yeah, Doctor Strange Endgame. He talks about out of the 1 in a million chances, the chance they have. It has to be making the game a little muddy, not a little muddy up the game as much as you can, run that clock out. Which is funny because I also think that there's a misconception. I put this out the other day. There's a misconception that Ohio State's this big play team. No, they have been very comfortable with passing short and running the ball down the field until the end of the game. And then, like I said that when they drag you into the deep waters, and you're coming up with that last gasp of breath, you sink. Davy Jones
Yeah.
comes down and pulls you by your legs.
Well, in
So,
Ohio State, I think that misconception comes from the fact that Ohio State does have the ability to quick strike also. So they can get chunks of yards in a hurry. They can score touchdowns in a hurry. They're not limited in just one way of how they're going to attack you. And I think that's important. So I gave my score prediction. I didn't hear one from you. What do you think?
what did I say yesterday? I think I said 20. I said 27 or 30 to 13.
Interesting. So I even have a larger margin of victory than you do.
Yeah, I told you I don't have us covering. I don't. And when I say 27 30 points, I mean it's a very comfortable 27 to 30 to 13, as in they score late. So
interesting. Okay.
well, we'll see what Jackson here.
Yeah,
Let's see
bring
what
him
he
on
has
in.
to say.
How you doing today, gentlemen? How's your Thanksgiving been?
It was good. How was yours, Jackson?
Oh, it's been going pretty good. Just keeping up with a little college football and NFL. And even though the slate's kind of sloppy this year, sloppy slates mean one thing: upsets are
Yes,
coming.
right.
It does. Jackson, I haven't got to ask you yet. I didn't get to hear your thoughts on your show. What were your thoughts about your guys' loss last week?
Not good. We were a disaster against Oklahoma. Complete and total disaster.
It was so crazy because I have this group chat with a bunch of like 5 of my best military friends, and one of them's a huge OU fan. And earlier in that day, he said we're gonna beat them bad. And I sat there thinking to myself, I don't know what my buddy's drinking on right now in Oklahoma, but it must be really good. And then come to see what happened, it was just I was surprised very. I'm not gonna lie to you, it kind of scared me going into this week. Not to be honest with you.
I mean, if we look back against Vanderbilt, Oklahoma should have scared us more than it really did. I mean, we got smacked 24-3. I hope we look better against Auburn next Saturday. I mean this Saturday, tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we're gonna wait and see. I don't know which version of Bama we're getting.
Right.
But tell me what's good with the Buckeyes, gentlemen. How y'all doing tomorrow? And one question. Is Ryan Day in a similar boat to where Jim Harbaugh was in 2021?
It's a good question. So my thought is yes, and it might even be, I think it's more dire, to be honest with you, because I said at the beginning of the season, if Ryan Day does not beat Michigan, he's gone. And I think his quote earlier this week, and I'm sure you saw this, Garrison, we talked about it. He said that losing the game has been one of the worst things that has ever happened to him in his life. Besides he mentioned the passing of his father, he said losing the game has been one of the worst things that's ever happened to him in his life, for him and his family. And I think that it has definitely taken a toll. And this is the worst Michigan team he's ever had to play. If he can't beat this Michigan team, I don't know what else there is to do in terms of him winning this game. And this is the game. This is the game all Buckeye fans care about. If you go, there were times in the, early 2000s, like the 2004 team, Ohio State lost 4 games that season, but fans love the fact that they kicked crap out of Michigan in that final game. That beating Michigan in that final game can even make a crappy season a good one. So the only way, in my opinion, if Day could save his job if he loses this game is if he turns around and wins the national championship, because I think regardless of the outcome of this game, they're in the college football playoff. What do you think, Harrison? As far as his question and being in a situation similar to what Harbaugh was.
It's very similar. He's a little bit ahead of the curve because before that time, Jim Harbaugh hadn't won the conference. Actually, Jim Harbaugh hadn't won a college conference in his career at that point. Been to a national championship, done all that, one playoff game. he's in a very serious situation right now. He's in a situation where if he doesn't, I don't believe if he were to lose this game and not win a national championship, he would be fired. But if he were to lose this game, and he would have to win that national championship for people to feel comfortable, at least the fan base.
Yeah.
It would be the only thing. I remember if I said before, if we had beaten Georgia, I wouldn't have cared about those last 2 losses. I wouldn't have cared at all.
Well, because they would have kicked the crap out of TCU, and that would have been a national championship.
Exactly. And so, but he is in a similar situation where, man, you feel the pressure from the fan base, and he feels the pressure no matter what. Yeah, when he took this job, he knew what was at stake, and he knows what the rules are. And the rules are you beat that team up north. That's in the contract. He and the fact that he talks about it all the time and he expresses how he understands that makes me feel good as a fan, because it means that it's not a Kyle McCord situation where you think he thinks it's just another game to you. It's not just another game. Great quote from Urban Meyer: "This is not the biggest game. This is a lifestyle." And those are the ways of thinking that help Ohio State win this game, that help Jim Tressel win these games. He came in and he made sure from the get-go he let the whole fan base know they were going to beat that team up north.
Yep.
And so a lot of people forget. Ryan Day has done it. He's done it.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Ohio State beats Michigan tomorrow. They're in the playoffs. No questions asked. I mean, they clinch a bid to the Big Ten title game, but basically, if you're in the Big Ten title game or the SEC title game, you're in the playoffs. Because I remember a couple weeks ago when watching Alabama Mercer, before I started doing the Alabama postgame show, I heard the broadcaster saying, if you're in the SEC title game, you should never be left out, no matter what your record is, which tells me right then and there, somebody from the ACC is getting screwed.
Yeah. Well, and to the I put this comment up here about fire him, and Gojay's comment here about fire him and replace him with who? Urban didn't play top 10 teams. Urban did play top 10 Michigan teams. 2016, it was a top 5 matchup at the shoe, and the winner was going to go to the Big Ten championship and make the college football playoff. Urban Meyer and Ohio State won that game. 2018, it was Michigan was ranked 4, Ohio State was 10th, and Urban boat raced him in his final game. They won. Yeah, it was 62-38.
Yep.
Those were the kind of games that Day does not have on his resume. So
Day was the co-OC for that.
Okay, sure.
Him and Kevin Wilson. Yeah.
Yes, but
the offense the year before was so bad.
The offense, I mean, his JT Barrett offenses were what they were. But, let's not pretend like Urban was beating up on Brady Hoke for his entire tenure. He was also playing Jim Harbaugh when everyone thought Jim Harbaugh could still be the savior, and he eventually ended up being with some help from Connor Stalions. But, so, when you joined here, Jackson, you seemed to think that there was an opportunity for an upset. What do you think?
I think the spread is too high. It's too high. I mean, I get it. Michigan's been a disaster all season. But here's the thing, though. Everybody brings their A game in the game. Everyone brings their A game. And I think Ohio State wins this one 31-20. I think it's closer than the experts have it. And honestly, you're going to see a really good Ohio State team. And I think Michigan, they're going to bring their A game against the Buckeyes. They're going to be better than they have been throughout this season. They've got a little bit of that mojo from Northwestern left over.
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of carryover from Northwestern. I don't know if Garrison disagrees with me on that, but I do agree with you, Jackson, that they're going to be the most focused that they've probably been in the last few weeks because, once they started on that losing streak, okay, they knew their college football playoff hopes are done. We're not even going to win the Big Ten. They kind of checked out. No one on that sideline is going to check out for this game, no matter how bad the record is. What do you think, Harrison?
I want to ask Jackson a question here.
Okay.
Tell me how they get to 20 points.
Well, simple.
How Michigan gets to.
Michigan's going to use that running game.
So you
how
think
many rush are? Yeah,
is gonna.
I feel like they've tried to use that all. I feel like they've tried to use that all year, and it's combined to 5 losses. So that's my only question when I talk about this game is that I don't see how they can even get to 20 points because that would.
Yeah, they don't have a guy like
Yeah,
Jalen Milroe who's either feast or famine. For them, it's mostly been famine. You know, they don't have a guy who can run around, make plays at really any position on their offensive side of the ball, except
That's
for
because you're going to
Loveland.
see some field goals from Michigan, a couple of them start off.
Some Zavada.
I did mention I
Yeah.
think they score on their first drive, but
Mhm.
yeah,
Is that a cat I hear? Is that a cat I hear?
I'm just
Yeah.
yeah, that might be. He's I just got home, first time
Hey,
he's
what's
seen
up,
me in a
kitty
couple
cat?
days. So
What's up, kitty cat? Happy Black Friday.
yeah. But again, back to Michigan's offense. They don't. And Donovan Edwards has been a no-show. He's been really bad all year long. So I don't. It's really up to Mullings. If it's Mullings, if he can break off a few runs like Donovan Edwards did a couple years ago, maybe they've got a shot. If some random turnovers happen, if he can't do that, then I'm with Garrison on this one. I don't really see how they're able to score enough points to really compete with what Ohio State has to offer on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think right here, Goj, he says something like that. Yeah, it would have to be a Will Howard picker strip, something like that. It would have like Stewart coming around the bend on Donovan Jackson, getting a sack and a strip, or someone in that second. I hope he doesn't throw a pick. We don't. There's no reason why our offense should be in a situation where Will Howard throws a pick against this secondary. I mean, if he gets pressured, dude, throw it, look, point at your mom and throw it in the stands. But I think I think we can pretty much take advantage of anything on this offense, especially the run game, the defensive line in the second half. But
yeah,
there we go.
All right.
Before I go,
Yep.
I want to ask you gentlemen something.
Mhm.
What are your top three all-time matchups of the game throughout the history of the rivalry?
I can go first, Garrison, because I've got that pretty much off the top of my head here.
Go ahead.
Number one for me is the 2006 game, 1 versus 2. I was actually at that game. The hype was unbelievable all season long, and that was still in the BCS era. So obviously, whoever was going to win that game guaranteed they were going to be in the national championship game. And the game was great. That's my number one. Number two was the 2016 matchup. Went to double overtime.
Mhm.
First time that's ever happened in the history of the game. Michigan fans still think JT was short. He wasn't. It's got some great all-time moments there. And again, that was another moment where, they were able to students rush the field. And again, college football playoff spot, right on the line in that game. My third moment, that one's a little tougher. I'm actually going to say it was back in 2005. And I know that's going to surprise some people, but Ohio State wasn't expected to win that game going up into Michigan. And then Troy Smith leads that drive, Anthony Gonzalez has that crazy catch. They go and beat Michigan. They keep Michigan from, they really kept Michigan from having any momentum in the rivalry. And that was one of the last times that they thought they could win in 05, 06, 07. It was Lloyd Carr, kind of the end of his tenure there. That really kind of signaled, in my opinion, that kind of signaled the end of the Lloyd Carr era. Tressel kind of shut him down a little bit. So those are mine. What are yours, Garrison?
Okay, so my first one would be the 2006 game. I think that's the biggest game in the rivalry's history. Number 1 versus number 2. Sadly, or whatever, but Bo Schembechler died the day before the game.
Yep.
Yeah.
You remember just the and the game was at 3:30, which I think is a great time for the game because it's day, then goes into night. But you think about the plays in that game up until the Sean Crable late hit on Troy Smith, and just awesome. My second one, I would say, is it's a tough one. I'm gonna bounce back and forth, but 2019.
Okay.
That, and the reason I love that was because that was Ryan Day's first year, and coming out of dropping 60 plus on them to go and drop 56 the next year. And score wise, that was a more dominant win that Ryan Day had over that Wolverine team. I love that. And then backtrack a little bit more. And also that was the game that J.K. Dobbins had 5 touchdowns in that same season. We sent 2 guys to New York, which is insane. It was Justin Fields and Chase Young.
Yeah.
My next one. It has to be 2016. A lot of people.
Helmets.
Hey man, it was beautiful. I used to love it because there was a lot of Wolverine fans that would get mad that we didn't wear our traditional jerseys that game. They didn't deserve for us to wear our traditional jerseys that game.
It should be traditional jerseys. I'm kind of on that. We don't need any of that other alternate bull crap.
Disrespect them. Not disrespect them. Wear whatever you want. But I loved it because a lot of Wolverine fans love to talk about that JT call, right? But they don't want to talk about the fact that before that play, you got Curtis Samuel running right to left on them, getting us in position to do that. They don't talk about how in the fourth quarter they had less than 15 yards and less than 15 yards.
Yeah.
You have a pick 6 in that game. They gave us ways to get back in that game, and we won it. And that call, cuts Curtis Samuel, cuts it back. Ohio State wins. Just it's beautiful, man. That was one of the coolest moments for me as a Buckeye.
Yeah.
Well, there we go. One of these days, we'll all have to discuss the history of the rivalry throughout the whole rivalry because it's a fun topic discussing.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I can tell you right now, Monday nights, tune in for the Ohio State Buckeyes Primetime show.
That's right, Jackson.
Garrison and Ryan Santos right here on Ohio State at the Voice College Football. And don't forget to tell those friends and family at the cashiers at Kroger about the magic that you see Mark, Steve Hellwagon, and Tony German bringing it on Wednesday mornings on Buckeyes Live and Ohio State at the Voice College Football. Stay tuned, and don't forget to call in on the Ohio State Buckeyes Primetime College Show.
My guy.
That's right. All right, Jackson, thanks for coming in.
Nice meeting you, Ryan, and Garrison, it's good to see you, man.
Good to see you too, buddy.
See you, man. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Tyler here. He's been waiting for a little bit. What's going on, Tyler?
How you doing, Ryan? How you doing, Garrison?
I'm good, man. Yourself?
I'm doing great. But this week, doesn't this week feel great?
Oh, yeah.
It does.
Listen, I've been doing nothing, Tyler, but spreading Ohio State propaganda all week. I'm so ready for this. I'm so ready.
Yeah. And Garrison, I'm glad I called in because I'm in the Army. I'm a veteran myself.
Yeah.
So
all right.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you,
man.
Well, I ran into a Michigan fan today when I was doing some getting some stuff for my house, and took a picture with him, and I showed him a picture that Will Johnson's not playing. He cried.
Well,
I bet he did.
Oh,
yeah. That sucks to suck.
What do you think's gonna happen in this game, Tyler?
I think we're gonna stomp the dogs. I think we're gonna stomp them. I think we're going to get all the frustration out of the past 3 years. Hell, even 4 years, because, they didn't show up in 2020 because of COVID. Liars.
Yep. Yeah. And I can have a whole discussion about that at some point as far as the whole 2020 thing, because that was a garbage reason for them to cancel because they didn't have – it wasn't just a football team. It was the entire university. They only had the entire athletic department that only had 9 COVID cases, so –
what's even funnier about that is that before the hell happened, before we started the season, it was their institution, their athletic department saying no, they're ahead of everybody else, that they know how to handle this perfectly. And then when you look at the actual article that came out when they said why they weren't going to play that game against us, they listed because of injuries. And I said, since when did you make injuries about it? I said, you're telling me you can definitely field a team to play the game. You just didn't want to. You didn't want to.
And that's exactly what I'm feeling like for this week. Colson Loveland and Will Johnson, especially Will Johnson, he don't want to play. He's making up excuses for
Johnson
an
definitely
S4.
doesn't want to play. I think Loveland tried to play. It doesn't sound like he's gonna go, but we'll see. That's still not confirmed yet.
But one thing I can't stand is people making excuses. So why are you Will Johnson? You say you're the best corner in college football, right? Quote unquote. Why are you not facing the best receiver in college football?
He doesn't want that problem, bro. He doesn't want that problem.
He wants to keep his draft stock high. Yeah. But he's kind of pulling a JSN, which I didn't like what JSN did either. Back in, a couple years ago. But appreciate you calling in here, Tyler.
All right.
Call in next week, man.
Yeah.
I will.
All right, so Garrison here to wrap up.
Wait, hold 1 second. I think he has something to say real quick.
Oh.
Bring him back up real quick.
I'm going to bring him back in here real quick. Oh, I tried to. Go ahead, you bring him in.
Wait a second.
I bought a nice bottle of champagne before to celebrate after the game, guys.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Way it should be. Hopefully you can break that out.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing, guys.
OH.
I know, baby. All right, we'll see you. All right, so to wrap up, assuming I kind of want to flip things here. I want to go to a quick negative and then to a quick positive before this starts.
Okay.
What do you think if Ohio State were to lose this game? What do you think the fallout would be?
It takes me 6 hours to get to Columbus. Probably, I'm gonna guess for Ryan Day, it takes him less than 30 minutes. Before that game ends, I'll be in Columbus before it. Not YouTube, not anything crazy. Just to have a conversation. I'll get to Columbus before he gets there. I'll get to Columbus before he gets out of there. It's gonna be sad.
Yeah.
The show I have the Star and Blue show the next day. Won't be happy.
I'm sure not. Yeah.
Won't be happy.
For me, like I mentioned, I think his days would then be numbered. Again, it would all hinge on a national championship. The fan base here, we're so ready to explode and just beat the crap out of Michigan after all the crap they talked.
Yep.
It's so annoying how they have talked. And I just want to be able to shut them up, put a foot on their neck and just kind of move on to Oregon, which is kind of how I want to end the show here is if Ohio State does end up winning this game and they do end up moving on to the Big Ten championship, what do you think their chances are of possibly winning a rematch on a neutral site in Indy? How do you think?
I think they win. I think they win that rematch. I think they win that rematch. I think the line right now is -3 for Ohio State. I trust outside of the way the whole Wolverine thing has gone for the last 3 years, and even though they did cheat during it, I always harken back to when Ryan Day had that second chance against Clemson. He got that second chance against them, and he poured it on. He made sure he did it. And also knowing that it's hard to beat a team twice in one season. It's very hard.
Sure.
And I can't imagine Ohio State's, not our secondary. I can't imagine Burke playing that bad again. I can't. So, and again, we changed, like me and you have both mentioned, they have changed things on that defense after that game that compliment us more, that help us be more explosive on defense. I would expect them to win that game.
Yeah.
Yourself?
I tend to agree. There would be more Ohio State fans in Indy, obviously. A lot closer to travel, would be a home field advantage. It typically is whenever Ohio State plays in the Big Ten championship. Unfortunately, it's been a while. I do think it would be a hard matchup. I don't think it would be an easy win by any stretch. I mean, Oregon's already beaten Ohio State once. They have the blueprint to do it. Obviously, the defense has changed a lot since then. But I think that I do think Ohio State would have the inside track to win that game. But I do not want to look ahead really any further. No. My complete focus is on tomorrow and kicking the crap out of Michigan. That's what I'm looking forward to
Yeah.
do. And I'm hoping we're back here on Monday talking about a Buckeye victory instead of a Buckeye loss.
I suspect we will, my friend. I suspect we will.
I hope so. Well, thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, on YouTube, X, however you consume this show, podcast listeners as well. We will be back on Monday, same normal time, 8:00 for Primetime Live, and we'll recap this game and also look forward to whatever Ohio State's future is, whether it's the Big Ten championship game or possibly having to go on the road for a CFP game, which again, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But until then, I'll talk to you on Monday, Garrison.
Real quick before we go, can I just
Yeah.
read this to you real quick? I'm on X. I just saw this. Dude, Dallin Hayden has 62 carries for 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 3.1 per.
Yeah, he hasn't done a whole lot there. He probably should have gone somewhere that was going to utilize him a little bit more, but
Yeah,
here we are.
that's
They're
tough.
a throw first team with Shador being Deion's kid. You knew that was going to happen anyway.
Yeah.
Plus, their offensive line isn't very good, so there's that.
Not at all.
Yeah.
All right,
right,
man.
I'll talk to you Monday, Garrison.
Sounds good, man. OH.
OH, IO, baby.